Spike, my first question is about Heather, who I will note is buried in an unmarked grave, so her grave won't be desecrated by white nationalists and neo-Nazis. I'm going to talk about Susan Bro, her mother, and where you were in the making of this film when Heather was murdered and how it changed the film that you were making.
Well, I made a mistake in recounting the story in Cannes. In Cannes, I got it mixed up. I said that August we didn't start shooting till the fall. So there's 1 year today. I didn't see, as David Chappelle has called them tiki torch motherfuckers. I didn't see that Friday night till Saturday. And I was in Martha's Vineyard, and I couldn't watch anymore. And at that time, my house I don't play golf. My house is on the 18th hole in Martha's Vineyard, and fate, destiny, he was teeing off. So I went over to him after he hit the ball, and I told him about Charlottesville. And he said, Spike, I've been on the course the last 4 hours. So I just found it, even before I told Obama, I made up my mind this was going to be the ending of the film. And what you saw was written by David Duke, neo-Nazis, alt-right, and the KKK. But I knew that I had to get the blessing of Miss Bro, so I was able to get her number, and I gave my condolences the best way you can. I mean, what can you really say? I mean, her daughter got murdered on national television. And she's seen my films, and she said, I trust you, Spike. So once I got the blessing from her, that was the ending. There was no way, no one was going to be able to, studio, whoever, was not going to talk me out of this was the end of the movie.
I want to ask you about the scene with Harry Belafonte and how that scene was written and how it was cut and how that scene came together, because it's a beautiful piece of editing and a really amazing contrast in two stories.
Well, the scenes, the indoctrination of the new Klan members, and the story of Waco, Texas, in 1915 was in the script, and it was in the script in a way of this is happening simultaneously, but at the script form, you don't have the luxury of actually already having shot the film, and being able to say, well, we can do this. So it's a lot of times it's a matter of, well, let's have a block of the story from Waco, and then we'll go to where they're doing the dinner and the indoctrination. But it's really finally, in the editing room, we can really, really shape it and have it really and truly become one. And I think that was our idea. Wouldn't you say, Spike? That it was going to be one. And it wasn't ever going to feel as if emotionally, it's got to feel as if they're intertwined with each other. Even coming out of that at the very end, and you hear the the crowd in the house, and they're chanting, Black Power, Black Power, Black Power, and then that comes over into that scene in which David Duke is about to give a toast, and we saw that there was a lot of room before Topher actually finally delivers that first line. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, wow, this is space. And oftentimes, it's the kind of space where you just, we're going to cut this down. He's going to do the toast right away. But it gave us the opportunity to, end that, the cutting back and forth by bringing that chant right into the Klan. And we could do it 3 or 4 times before the beginning of that toast. But otherwise, a lot of it was just I'm sort of an instinctual editor. I don't think a lot about what should work. I just fall through it.
Laura, I'm going to ask you about Patrice, who is a composite character, but also reflects not only a lot of women who are active in the movement, but also an ideology that she presented in terms of, what the movement could do. So who are the people who are important to you in terms of your research in talking to, who were actually in the movement and who were influential in how you approach this character?
Well, Spike initially introduced me to Kathleen Cleaver. We were all able to talk to her and hear her story. So that was kind of the starting point of researching these people.
And she was basically the person who ran communications for the Black Panthers, who now teaches at Emory Law.
Yes, now she's a law professor at Emory. She started off in SNCC, and she knew Stokely Carmichael, and then moved to Oakland and joined the Black Panther Party, and then married Eldridge Cleaver. And so they were huge figures in the movement, of course. And then I've read a lot of Angela Davis's books and watched documentaries, watched a lot of interviews with her. And then I contacted the BSU at Colorado College to speak to people who were actually there then in the early 70s. And just talk to people in my life as well. My aunts who were involved in the movement, spoke to my dad, and just wanted to create kind of, this amalgamation of the face of the Black Power movement. And I think it's so rare to see the female side of that. And I'm so thankful for Spike for allowing me to play that, because, at the height of the Panthers, the majority of their members were women. And usually when we talk about these movements, it's this really kind of macho, male-driven face. And the women were a huge part of that. So I just wanted to pay homage to them and give them, the respect that they deserve.
Topher, I got to imagine this is a kind of a good news, bad news call you get from your agent. Spike Lee wants you in his movie. You're playing David Duke. I mean this honestly. It's a hard thing to convince yourself to do. So, what was your thought process about playing this part, and what were the earliest conversations with Spike about how you were going to approach playing David?
Well, the good news was, it wasn't like I'd never met Spike and then he called and wanted me to do it. Nobody saw it for me. I begged to read Spike's new film, just because I'm such a fan. And then I called my agents and said, hey, I think I have a take on David Duke. It was like silence, like for the next 5 or 6 minutes. But what they said is they talked to Spike and they said, it's not like anything you've done before and you're going to have to go in and read for him. And I was happy to do it. One, because it's on me to show a proof of concept, but two, I kind of wanted to see if I could do it. Mm-hmm. The night before, I was rehearsing alone what I was going to read, and it was more inflammatory than some of my dialogue that's in the film, what I was reading, what I was going to read for Spike. And I was alone in my office at home. My wife had gone to sleep, and alone in this room, I was like swallowing some of the words. And that's not right for the character, but you're so trained not to even think those words. So the next day when I went in to meet Spike, I kind of started with a rehearsed speech that I had. It was like, hey, nice to meet you. And also, like, I don't know if this is corny, or if this is annoying, because every actor says this, but I'm so uncomfortable. And this is why everyone has to work with Spike, is he immediately started making me feel comfortable. He's a really funny guy. I don't know if a lot of people know that about Spike, but he's really hilarious. And I started feeling so comfortable that I then gave a performance to him that he then cast me in. But I really don't think I would have gotten the role if not for that exchange. So I'm very grateful to him for that.
I'm curious, in looking into Kwame's work and hearing what he had to say, what was your way into that character? And then we'll talk a little bit about the scene at the very beginning of the film.
I think my way in was just knowing that well, one, this film had purpose and had relevancy to sort of everything that's going on right now. And to be honest, anything Spike is doing, because he's such, he is the artist that he is, you better believe it's going to have, a currency to it and a pulse to it. And so to be able to step into these shoes, I mean, for an actor, it's one of those things, because it's like it's only a certain amount of time in a film, and it's Spike Lee, and you ain't trying to mess it up for him, and you know. But I just remember him being so he's so detail oriented. And just about the research and about I mean, we were sharing books, and you know, he's like, man, I need you to, you know, watch the Black Power mixtape and get over there and pick it up. It's at Amoeba on Sunset. I'm like, Spike, I'm with friends. I'm like, you know, but like, you know, but he's he's like, just get it, you know, just but it was that kind of attention to detail that allowed me to just kind of flow and do what I needed to do. The message is so heavy and so necessary from Kwame Ture, excuse me. But my way in was his humor, man, his charisma, the things that people don't know about him, you know, the smile, you know, the jokester. And that came from just studying video, and his Trinidadian, that lilt that he had when he, you know, talked to people, and just that kind of energy. I mean, it was even our costume designer, Marcy. I mean, just having that conversation at 40 Acres in the Middle of headquarters about what he was wearing, what bracelet, you know. And then, like, did he like his coffee black or with sugar? Like, you know what I mean? The little stuff that we as actors just kind of jump into. And
John David, this is not your first Spike Lee film. If people look really closely for Student in Harlem Classroom in Malcolm X, where somebody you know, your dad, Denzel Washington, was acting in. So you're not new to Spike, but you might be new, like a lot of people are, to Ron Stallworth. I mean, this book was originally published by a press that only put out books by police officers and firefighters. That's how little interest there was in Ron Stallworth's story when it published. I want to ask you about your encounter with the book and your encounter with Ron, because the book is very much a procedural. This happened and then this happened. What did you learn about the man in talking to Ron, and what was it that you wanted to capture in his spirit that may not be reflected in the words that he wrote in his memoir?
You know, I really wanted to represent the time, you know, the 70s, the late 60s. My way in was music and a lot of Soul Train at night. I was with U2 and Soul Train, and you know, this, and like Superfly, and just I was, but even before talking to Ron, I was able to contact like my uncles and different men of those that lived in those times, just to get an idea of what it was like, you know. And it just seemed like America was just fed up. They were fed up. Vietnam, the murder of Martin Luther King, JFK. And so that frustration was filtered through, you know, positive things like the clothing, the hair, the music, you know, the entertainment. So that was sort of like the foundation I needed even before meeting Ron. And also, too, Spike would let me meet Ron at first.
Wait, he didn't want you to?
He didn't. I was begging him for the number, like, every week I'm asking him, can I get the number? Not yet, not yet. So I didn't meet him until the table read. And it was something interesting that happened. I was doing my research, you know, obviously from the book and just looking at different interviews online. But it was interesting hearing him speak about his experience right before we started reading the script back to him. As he was telling us, he passed around that membership card, the KKK membership card. Mm-hmm. Seriously. Right. That's the reaction I had.
Yeah.
Like, oh. I'm seeing David Duke's signature on the back and like these rules.
David Duke says it never happened, and then we passed around the card, and he signed
it. He signed the thing. Yeah. You know, so yeah, it was like the book. He was very generous with his time and information, and like the book, like just from the tactical standpoint of all where to stand, how to hold your gun, things like that. But getting underneath the surface and the emotions that went with living in Colorado Springs. I mean, you can make a movie about him even just being the first African American police officer there. I mean, that let alone the sting operation, and that was very helpful. Some of the personal things that we talked about that I cannot share with you all, and I exchanged some personal stuff of my own. You know, and sort of this mission that I kept asking him. I will say, I kept asking him, you didn't get emotional at one, but like, did you ever say, you know, did you ever get too emotional or whatever? And he said, no, it was always about the job. Wow. It was always about the job. And that day at the banquet, the banquet scene. That was the toughest day for me too, because that sort of, like the card, gave me this sort of portal to his soul again. And that, like, this man was staring death and hate in the eye, and he had the law on his side. He still could have got buried, and nobody heard of him. So I called him that after that scene and was like, "You're a hero, man, like American hero for real."
How does the conversation change outside this film? What do you hope people are talking about in the weeks and months and years ahead?
I think that conversation, exchange ideals can work, but we have to come from a place of truth. And I think that for me, and I think I want to end it tonight on this note, that we have to deal with the history of this country. If we don't acknowledge that the United States was built upon the genocide of Native people and slavery, then what's the point? Because if you don't deal with the foundation, the origin, the basic fabric, then we're not going to get anywhere, because that has led to white supremacy, which is where we are today. The stuff that we're taught, I was taught, public school, Brooklyn, New York, that lie about George Washington, the cherry tree. I was not taught that George Washington owned slaves. Thomas Jefferson, the first probably 8, 9, you Google. That's the legacy of this country. You go to the Constitution, it says slaves were you can read it, Google, 3/5 of human being. I'm not making up, read it, 3/5. So we have to get to the basics. And then once we get there, then we can move forward. Otherwise, we'll be talking about the same thing 100 years from now. So, good night. Get home safely.